Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, it's live now.
Okay. So it's been a while since I've done a live. So I'm a little bit nervous, but I want to say welcome to you all. We're so excited that this event is happening today. Thank you for joining us. Like you all, I have been excited for this event, Decolonizing Our Diets. So I'll start with a welcome. Tanse, Jesse Cardinal, Netzigasun, Kikino Tania, Kita Tamskat Nawao, Mio Kisagao. Uh, so my name is Jessie Cardinal. I'm currently serving as the executive director for Keepers of the Water. I'm from the community of Kikino. Kikino is a Cree word. It means our home. And yeah, we're really happy to have you all here. Like I said, I've been like excited about this. It's been a while since I've done a live, but I think that it's going to be a wonderful hour and a half together. We have two amazing guests today joining us. We have Dr. Kevin Lewis, who we've had in the past. We've had webinars in the past, bear teachings and moose teachings. Check them out on our YouTube channel, Keepers of the Water YouTube channel. And then we have Jared Williams. And so before we get into the topic of the day, which is decolonizing our diets, I want to talk about Keepers of the Water. So Keepers of the Water is the organization that is, let me catch my breath. So Keepers of the Water is the organization that's hosting this webinar. So some of you guys may not know about our organization. Check us out on our website, keepersofthewater.ca. We also have a Facebook page, we have a YouTube channel, and all kinds of other like social stuff, thanks to our communications manager, Tori Kress, who just keeps us current. And we might even have TikTok, so check us out there too. So Keepers of the Water, we're an Indigenous-led organization. It was formed in 2006, and it was formed in a need to protect water. So at that time, the Dene people in Northwest Territories, Francois Paulette, some of you may know, Sam Gargan, there was others there, and then there was, some Cree people were there, and non-Indigenous people came to support this gathering that happened in 2006 in Northwest Territories on the shores of the Decho. The Decho is a Dene word, which means the mighty river or the fast running river. And so really quickly, I'll just tell you a little bit about us. So at that time, the people were seeing, because they're on the water all the time. The more north you go, the more land-based we are. And so people were seeing the quality of the water was changing and the quantity. So water levels were dropping, fish were getting sick, animals were getting sick, the medicines were either disappearing or they just weren't the same. So it was really a crisis at that time to say, like, we know that there's the tar sands that is upstream of us. So everything that gets put in the river from the biggest, and the tar sands is one of the biggest industrial projects on the planet. And it's located in the region of the Treaty 8, Fort McKay, Fort Chip, Fort McMurray First Nation. And so all the chemicals and waste that ends up going in the river, spilling into the river, that kind of stuff, it flows into the Mackenzie River and through all of these communities that are on the water daily. They're like fishing, hunting, all these things. And so, we got together at that time. I wasn't there, I didn't join until 2008, but the people got together and said, we are going to work together to protect water. And a declaration was made that water is sacred and we must work to protect it. So that's what guides our work to this day. And so Keepers of the Water, we're a very diverse organization. We do a lot of work. We do We work on the tar sands. So there's a lot of issues being the biggest industrial project on the planet. You know, the Alberta government wants to start, and the companies want to start dumping the tailings ponds, which are completely toxic, into the Athabasca River. We have coal mining, like thermal coal mining, which is they say one of the dirtiest forms of energy on the planet, but there's a couple. There's like nuclear and other things like that. So we're involved in that. We're trying to, you know, stop that from expanding. We're hosting a healing walk. We do a lot of work in healing because we understand, you know, firsthand, we're in the communities, we're on the land. We understand firsthand the impacts that, you know, and how that impacts us mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. And so because we do this work and we are on the land, we know that it's like we can only look at the problems. We can't only be dealing with like the heaviness, that we also need to work on the healing. And so we do things like medicine camps. We partnered with Kevin Lewis, Dr. Kevin Lewis, who's one of our presenters today. We've partnered with them 3 years in a row on a medicine and water gathering. There's another one in the works. We just got to find a date that works for them and us to do a fourth gathering. And we do a tar sands healing walk. We haven't had one since 2014. We are going to be having one this year in Fort McMurray. So stay tuned on our Facebook page and our website. It's going to be the first weekend in August. For those of you that are interested in coming, anyone's welcome to come and attend. We do a lot of science work. We partner with all kinds of people. We partner with First Nations, Métis settlements, scientists, universities, schools. So we do a lot of education and outreach because we have we have an amazing board and staff that are like so knowledgeable in different things. And we get asked by schools come and do presentations on different topics, or they want to do research projects with us. And so we're growing. We're a growing organization, and we're just happy to be here. And, you know, that's part of our responsibility. It's part of everybody's responsibility to protect water. And so we're governed by a board. We have four co-chairs. And so they're Indigenous women, Cleo Reese, Sue Duranje, and Jean Lomcourt. And then we have Alvin Manitopius. And then we have a board, and we have a wisdom council, an elders wisdom council. And then we have our staff. And so we're just in a really good place as an organization. The people that we have, you know, are primarily Indigenous. We do work with non-Indigenous people, and those are our allies. And so we say, well, what is an ally? So an ally is somebody who acknowledges the harms that colonization has done to Indigenous people through the acts of genocide, of residential schools, of the Indian Act, of things like that. And they take a back seat and let us do our work. And so that's what an ally is. So we're going to start getting into now why we're here today. So we're here for decolonizing our diets. And somebody has a hand up. Does somebody want to say something? We have some people, some stuff going on behind the scenes here. But yeah, so we're here for the topic today, which is decolonizing our diets. And somebody put their hand down because you're throwing me off track here. But so, you know, we're a water protection organization, and people will say, well, why are you doing this? Like, why are you putting up a solar project, a pilot solar project in Fort Chip? Or why are you doing a you know, food security workshop in Edmonton? Well, as Indigenous people, we understand everything is connected. Water gives life to everything. And so that's the decolonized, you know, part of our work, because a big part of our work is decolonization. And so, yeah, everything is connected. And so we're not in these silos working this way, because we know that it's like everything is connected and water gives life to everything. So let's get into decolonizing our diet. And so this has been a topic. Oh, I put my hand up. Sorry, that was my hand that I put up. Oh yeah, so okay, let's before we start talking about that, tell us where you're from. So we're live on Facebook. Tell us where you're from. We're like always happy to hear that, from people wherever they're joining from. Sometimes we have people from across the pond or wherever. We will be opening it up for questions later. So the way that this is going to work is we're going to I'm going to do just a little bit of like, why we're having this webinar. And then we're going to introduce Jared Williams will be our first speaker. And then we'll have Kevin speak. Then we'll open it up for some questions. So just give me a minute. So, like I said, we've been working on food security and food sovereignty for a long time. In 2015, Keepers of the Water hosted a gathering called We Are the Land. And a lot of Treaty 6 communities participated in that. And so we had gardening workshops, we had straw bale home workshops, all kinds of things, because we know that access to clean water is a necessity to be able to grow our own food. And growing our own food is a necessity to have food security and food sovereignty. But on the other side of that is being able to be on the land to harvest our foods as well. Because we're not only farmers, like we are farmers, but we're not only farmers. We harvest medicines and berries and, the animals. And because of our violent forced removal from the land, which was intentional, that disconnected us from our land. And so if you guys don't know the history, learn the history. There's lots of information of how Indigenous people, First Nations people, and then the Métis people were violently and forcibly removed from the land. And so when we were on the land, we were healthy. We had rich diets, and so we had very diverse and lots of things to eat. And so we hear stories of like our people would live until they were in their hundreds. That was common. There was no such thing as diabetes. There was no such thing as cancer. These are all new things that have happened in probably the past 50 years or so. And I remember, and even my dad said, because he's like that generation connected to the older generations of like, the canned food. Like he thinks that when canned food came in, and that was when they forced people onto what they call reserves. So like they rounded up First Nations and they forced them on these reserves. You couldn't leave. You weren't allowed to leave. You had to get a pass from the Indian agent. You couldn't even gardening your food was like completely controlled by the Indian agent. And so if you were a good gardener and you were doing really well, then you would get less food rations and they would not allow you to sell it. And if you did, they had complete control over who you sold it to, how much, and of course they would take a cut. Completely just awful, So Canada has a lot of making up to do in that area. And so here we are today. So, we're reclaiming our lands, we're reclaiming our teachings, we're reclaiming our knowledge systems, and we're reclaiming our foods. And so that's what we're going to talk about today with Kevin and Jared. So we have Alyssa. I wanted to introduce you guys to Alyssa May Laviolette. She's our new Treaty 8 outreach coordinator. She's from ACFN, which is Athabasca Chippewa First Nation. So I'll let you introduce yourself, Alyssa. We're just happy to have you on our team with Keepers of the Water. She's been such an awesome joy to work with. And then Alyssa will introduce Jared and we'll get into our first speaker. So welcome everyone. Thank you and hope you enjoy.
Yeah, Glenate, Salot Ine, Donzanigia, Harilia, Si Lissimi Laviolette Hushe, Kaitele Dene Soslene, Kaitele Ko. Hi, everybody. My name is Alyssa May Laviolette. I'm a member of the Athabasca Chippewa First Nation. And yeah, I'm the Treaty 8 coordinator with Keepers of the Water. And I'll just be introducing Jared. I won't go over his full bio. I'll just let him introduce himself once he joins us. So Jared Williams, he is a father, chef, writer, and Indigenous educator. He's a passionate Indigenous foods educator who spent much of his youth with his late grandmother, immersed in Salish culture. After he graduated from culinary art, he spent a decade working in restaurants across Vancouver Island. before deciding to move back home to take the role of elders kitchen manager at Cowichan Tribes. After more than a decade of cooking for elders, he now works as an Indigenous Foods educator, writer, and consultant. Most recently, Jared was nominated and won several Canadian Online Publishing Awards, and he was also nominated for the 2022 BC Multiculturalism and Anti-Racism Award, and led to the first smoked salmon project conducted by the First Nations Health Authority. So that proved for him that traditional salmon smoking techniques are safe and effective for food preservation. And I'll just pass it over to Jared. So welcome, Jared.
Hey, Siebnesiea, Siebnesiea, Siebnesqualmo, Siebneshwalaqua, Ainta Hualmosne, Qwustenuxun. That's my name part down here in the corner part. Qwustenuxun. Everybody with me. Qwustenuxun. Easy breezy. Sieb skukata Hualmo Allens. Chitsel lalamechan at the Hualmoch, Atlins at the Hualmoch, Slakan. Oh, Haitap, Kasiab Nasia, oh, Haitap. Hello, everybody. I'm Jared Qwustenuxun Williams. What I was just telling everybody was that I am a I'm chef and a Indigenous foods advocate, I guess is probably the easiest like translation, but that I've worked with our foods as long as I'm able to remember, even as like a young child, we all worked together to eat, right? I guess just like a little bit on that. I was raised by my grandmother, who was this incredible matriarch that had at least 3 generations within, like her home all the time. And so there were always lots of other children. There was always, like my aunties and my uncles there, and we would always be working on something, whether or not we were repairing our dip nets to go fishing in the river, or if like we were having hang up salmon, we were always working as one. Even like the young children, we all worked. We all had jobs, and I can recall all of the like children in the house, and how the elders are when there's all those young ones in the house, like all the young ones get all the way loud and they say stuff like, Asha, go on, everybody get outside. So we'd be running on our way out the door, and she used to like to reach in there and say, "Not you, Jared, we got work to do." I used to think I was always in trouble. I didn't know why I always had to do work. Everybody else was allowed to go outside. Everybody else was allowed to go across the road, and I had to go visiting. We used to go to all of like the other elders' houses, and we used to have to listen to the language and to have all of our like foods. And when I was young, I thought I was in trouble, but as I grew older, I realized that like she was trying to ready me for something. I was probably one of the last like children that like she was able to, to raise, because all of like my aunties and my uncles had to go to dental school, and so I was probably the one like child that like she had a chance, to raise all the way through. So I was really lucky that way. But when I left home to go off to learn to become a chef, I went to culinary arts and all these like restaurants and things, but everywhere I went, we didn't have access to our traditional foods. There were no traditional foods. It was like what I was raised with all of a sudden like didn't exist. I even had this like one chef in this like really fancy restaurant I was at try to explain to me that cedar plank salmon is our traditional food. And I laughed and I was like, we didn't have convection ovens. I don't know how we could have that. But he was saying, no, that's the way you ate. And so anyway, I realized everybody out there was crazy and I ran away home as, like you just heard, to become the elders chef, where I learned a lot about how, at least in our province of BC, a lot of our traditional foods are not regulated in a way that we're allowed to have them, right? The food regulation here is very specific, that anything used to be like served has to be run through a registered supplier. And a lot of like the relatives I have aren't registered suppliers, and so we can only use what's commercially available. And so as like the elders like chef, I had to try to use commercially available foods, try to feed like elders that actually really wanted our traditional foods. And while I was there, I was trying to get our traditional smoked salmon to the elders at like this like the elders feast hall here back home. And yet these provincial regulations were always like in the way. And so I worked with the First Nations Health here to like show the world, I guess, that like the ancestors already like knew how to look after all of our fish, and so all I had to do was to use like the traditional techniques I learned, and to provide some samples, and then the CDC here, was able to say, oh yes, like this is a an effective technique, for preserving salmon. But we already knew that because we have been using it here for like thousands of years. And so just trying to help regulators realize that we already really like know what we're doing. And so in this example here, I want to try to highlight how traditional foods like our smoked salmon here on the West Coast, we've right into like who we are. And like the reality is that the more we use these like traditional foods, the more we like support who we are. And so if I use smoked salmon, I can walk you like through this chart here and really try to explain how our like food weaves into our culture. And so when we have smoked salmon to eat, it's usually with some kind of a fat. And when I was young, it was usually with a lard that we would have it out. But I can recall always like asking, like, did we always used to have lard? No, of course we didn't have lard. And all of the elders would like reference all these other fats we had. Like we had whale fat and like seal fat and like bear fat, all of like which like we're used to rehydrate the like dried salmon. And the elders actually they like to like joke that it really helps to lubricate it, like on the way in and on the way out if we have all that extra fat. But that in order to have it, it was also usually boiled, right? After it's all the way like dried. In order to rehydrate it, we would usually boil it on the stove. And in a yesteryear, once again, we didn't have a pot or a stove. And so how do we used to heat up our water? Well, we used to use a bentwood box with hot rocks in order to heat up all of like the water on the inside of the box. And so it's a little bit easier nowadays, but always trying to remember how we used to, right? How do we used to do these things? And if you wanted to eat smoked salmon and you had to cook it, you would like first have to actually smoke it. And so you have to know how to design a smokehouse. What wood do you use to light your fire? How do you look after that like fire? How long is it in there? How do you cut and hang and like salt and like dry it and all of like that information? Because out here it actually, we leave our salmon in the smokehouse for just about a week long. So you really have to like know how to look after it. And if you want to be able to dry a salmon, you got to harvest one. You got to know which one you require. Do you want a chum salmon or a Chinook salmon or a sockeye salmon? And why? Why do you want which one? And when do they run within the river? And how do you know which one looks like which? And do you want a male or a female? And why do you need each like gender and like how are they used? And then you need to know where to harvest and when to harvest, and you have to know how to harvest. All of you like this information. Like I've been using our traditional fishing spear for 30 years, and I'm only really like now learning how to use it, or I'm confident in using it. Yet if you want to harvest any of these things, you have to have the appropriate tools. And if I want to use a traditional fishing spear, I have to have one, and they're not commercially available. They're not at like a Walmart or anything. So you have to know how to make it. You have to know what like tree you use, and when to harvest it, and then how to carve it, and how to design the like handle and the spear points and all those things. You have to have all of that information. And when you're working with like the elders to learn all of this information, we learn our language. We learn what the names of these like trees are, what the names of these like salmon are, and how they all weave together. And that we learn all this, as I was like referencing earlier, when we are young, right? When I was living in my grandmother's house, we would go like fishing all the time, but I would have to repair a broken spear, you know, like the uncles would arrive home and go, oh, hey, you know, look at this, nephew. And I'd look and I'd say, what is it, uncle? And they go, look at my spear handle. It's all wrecked. And I'd go, yeah, okay. And they go, Asha, you have to repair it. You're the youngest one. And I'd go, I don't know how to do that. And they go, here's how you do this and X and Y and Z. But they'd only ever like to show you once. You'd only ever get it once. And then for years, they just go, oh, you know, here it is. And it would be all the way wrecked. And it was just up to you. You'd have to learn all of these like things. And then once you already knew how, it was up to you to actually like do the jobs. And so when we're young, we learn about all the different like tools and how to harvest and how to dry and how to cook and how to eat all of these like foods, and how the language weaves into it. And yet at the end of it all, if we don't eat smoked salmon, none of that happens. All of that information, all of the language, all of the knowledge, all of the what to harvest and, you know, like when to harvest, it won't happen. And when I was a kid, every house on the reserve here had a smokehouse, every one of them. I'd say now there's maybe 8 or 9 of them on the whole of our like res, and there used to be hundreds. And so even out in, you know, like the world here now, when we had to like, I live here on the island, but if we had to like Victoria, which is the capital of our province, there are no Indigenous restaurants. There's all these other hundreds of them, millions of restaurants. There's no Indigenous restaurants. So in order to like support who we are, we need to eat our food. And, you know, like this is exactly why, like on the left hand of this, you can like see how freaking like happy he is. Oh my goodness, you know, like like that's my son, and that's his like first salmon. And it's not, you know, like the most attractive. It was, you know, like a little bit old, and, you know, like we didn't eat it because it was really old, but he was so happy. Look at him, he's thinking about that. And now every like year, he's always, oh, Dad, are we gonna go fishing? Oh, Dad, are we gonna go fishing? And I say, well, if you want to go fishing, you got to learn how to use it. So he has to learn everything I just walked over with you if he wants to do this, and he wants it. And so we need to vitalize all of this. And, you know, so one last one. I live pretty much on the edge of the river here in Cowichan, and we rely on the river like for everything. And if you look here, you can see I'm working on a weir. If you look to like the upper like right, you know, that's a weir. Now, weirs used to run across the river here for like thousands of years, but there are no weirs here anymore. They are technically illegal. Now, if you look at that weir, it runs almost all the way across the river. It isn't all the way across the river. The one that's in like the it only runs the majority of the way across the river to allow the other like salmon to like travel upriver. And so on our river, there would have been at least like 6 weirs. And so a weir is an opportunity to run all the way across the river to keep all of the salmon to your himself, right? If you were to have it all the way across, you know, they wouldn't actually like travel up anymore. They'd all be yours. But in all of these like generations, that never happened. Nobody ever decided like to harvest all of them to themselves. Everyone realized that there were all those other weirs up the river that had to eat as well. So everybody always left room to let all of their like salmon like travel all the way upriver. And in this one image here, you know, like my youngest, you know, he's actually asking me, what are you doing, Dad? And I said, oh, you know, like I have to make a weir, son. He says, where did you learn that, Dad? I said, learn it. I laughed. I said, it's in here. It's on the inside of you, son. You don't have to learn this stuff. This is, you know, this is you. This is inside you. And he looked at me and he said, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, I'm using a rock off the edge of the river and the tree branches off the edge of the river. And you just, it's, you know, it's just as like easy as having to actually like do the work. I said, son, you know, you don't always have to read a textbook. It's all on the inside too. He says, okay, Dad. And then I said, and then you know, he said to me, well, I've never really like seen a weir. And I said, well, you know, here's one now. And then he asked, how long are when was the last weir here in the river? And I said, it's been over like 50 years, son. This is the only one. And he says, oh, okay, Dad. But he doesn't realize he's watching the like first weir in like 50 years, you know, to actually like happen on the river. He just thinks, okay, Dad, because it's the way that he lives, right? This is every day life. Like we go harvesting, we go like fishing, we like to eat all these foods. And so we need to help this next generation, you know, because we need to reinvigorate our traditional like food systems, you know, like to save ourselves, our culture, and our language. So I just want to say, hey, oh, hi tap, hey, oh, hi tap.
Thank you, Jared. So, you said a lot of interesting things that I was listening to, and about language. You know, it starts with the language, and I want folks to know that you have a TikTok. I don't have TikTok, but lots of people do. And you're revitalizing your language. Can you share a little bit about that with us? Because I know that you have language as kind of like the foundation of everything. So share a little bit about you know, what your journey is in relearning or reclaiming the language, and where are you doing that? Because I've seen some of your TikToks that you share on social media, and yeah, I'm really interested in that.
Sure, yeah. So raised with like the elders, I was always within our language, but as I got older, it was like there wasn't anybody around anymore. All the ones that used to use the language they left, right? You know, like we lose like the elders like so like fast, like we don't really like realize it, and then all of a sudden, you know, like we're on our own. But I would always try to help my family use our language. So my grandmother was completely like fluent, yet all of her like children, they don't use it actually at all. And you know, that's, you know, like a result of the residential school system. And so when I was young, you know, my grandmother tried really, really hard to ensure that, you know, like I like had the language, but then I was trying to help our youth and our relatives, you know, to use the language. And I was with some youth on the river, and I'm saying, oh, you know, you know, this is, you know, like the name of this one fish here, and oh, you know, this is, you know, like the like name of that fish, and this is, oh, you know, and then, you know, they said to me, oh, you know, like, why don't you have you know, like videos, uncle? And I said, videos? I don't have videos. It goes, no, it's easy here, look, you just have it on here, just go like this, and then you go, oh, hi, here's your video. And so I said, okay. So and then I was like, but what am I going to use that for? What, you know, like, I don't want to watch a video all day. And he says, oh, you know, you just have to go online with it. And then all of a sudden, you know, he was like having to introduce me to TikTok and all that stuff. And all of a sudden, it's been about a year now. But yeah, I'm trying to help to like save our language, because I'm actually like watching all the ones that use the language like leave. And so it's like, how can I help? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a journey that a lot of us are on for our generation, you know, and it's just such a I'm angry, I'm pissed off, you know, like we go through that grief as the you know, these generations, because we know that that language was stolen from us. It was taken from us through residential schools. And you know, and and it's in us, like you said, you know, that knowledge is in us when you're out with your son and you're making the, what are they called?
It's a weir.
A
Yeah.
weird, you
It's a
know,
weir.
like, so that knowledge is in us. And it's like, you want to, like, even me, I want to be, because I grew up the same thing. Like, I grew up around the Cree language, and then there's all that shame that our elders carried because they were, you know, forced that shame on through colonization and residential schools. And it makes me so angry, because it was like, it's like, holy, like how beautiful the languages are and how rich they are and how much knowledge is in them. And you know, that we should be able to be fluent in our languages. However, we are relearning our languages, and we will keep our languages alive thanks to all of the people that are working hard, like yourself, like myself. Kevin, he's you know, a lot luckier than us, because he grew up in a fluent household, you know. And I just really encourage the fluent speakers, teach the people, you know, like just speak the language and get out there. And like, we need you in our communities and in our classrooms. We need to keep the language alive, and if you're fluent, then we need you, you know. And I was listening to another webinar that Christy Belcourt and Tanya Capo are doing, and they're doing this whole series on like menopause and Indigenous women and women teachings. And one of the things Maria Campbell said is that, you know, a lot of people who went to residential schools, they're still carrying that nun and that priest on their shoulders. So it's like you living your life, and these people who are horrible people that, you know, didn't teach you anything good, they're still in your ear talking, you know. And so it's like, throw those things off your shoulder, and like, let's just be completely, beautifully, truly Indigenous. And so the other thing that I just want to touch on before we move over to Kevin was, you talked about you talked about a lot of like, figuring out first of all, like what you want to eat, and like the teachings first, right? Like you're given the teachings, and then it's like actually eating the food. It's one thing to have the teachings, but if you're not doing it, and you said like you told your son that's one of the easy parts, like, and so for all of us, it's like, we're listening to these webinars, we're watching all these videos, but that's where we need to make sure we're putting down our devices, stepping out of our houses, and being on the land, picking the berries. It's so easy, like, especially if you're out in the country, and if you're not, make that extra effort to drive out. And, there's a lot of more land-based camps coming up, and land-based learning, where they're providing spaces for people to come, where you can learn how to tan hides and pick medicines and pick berries. Because the more people that are connected to the land, the more land protectors and land defenders we're going to have, because they're going to understand how important our connection is. There's so much more to say, and that's why we're having a 2-part series, because this is a huge discussion, even with like Health Canada, like how they just so many wrongs were done of like telling us that our foods were bad, or that we were savages or whatever, and you need to like farm the land. And so the colonial people came in and said, here's your food guide, this is what you need to eat, and now they're starting to see is like, oh, well, actually traditional foods do keep people healthy, and they're vital for like the health of the planet, because it's not only Indigenous people who need to have access to these foods, and so I'm going to end there, and I just want to thank you. We are going to put your socials up in our Facebook chat, because you guys need to see his videos on language, and you're a chef, and so I know you have so much more to share that people don't know about. It was actually Art Napoleon, we reached out to him, we wanted him to come on the webinar. I think he's like on Marmalade, and what's that show called that he's on?
Moose meat and marmalade.
Meat and Marmalade, but he's of course a super busy guy, so he was like, Jared's your man. So thank you, Art, for referring Jared to us. We're just so excited to know you, and I'm looking forward to like future work with you for sure. So now we're going to hand it over to Alyssa, who's going to introduce our next presenter, Dr. Kevin Lewis. Unmute, Alyssa.
Oh, sorry about that. I said Masi Cho, Jared, and Jesse. Tansei, Kevin, happy to have you here to WOW. I just want to give a quick introduction. Dr. Kevin Lewis is a Nehio instructor, researcher, and writer from Qwustenuxun Lake Cree Nation and Treaty 6 territory. Dr. Lewis's work with higher learning institutions within the Prairie provinces of Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta in areas of Cree language development and instructional methodologies. His research interests include language and policy development, second language teaching methodologies, teacher education programming, and environmental education. For the past 15 years, Dr. Lewis has been working with community schools and promoting land and language-based education as the founder of Qwustenuxun Culture Camps, a nonprofit organization on holistic community well-being, and co-developer of land-based Cree immersion school. Qwustenuxun, sorry, my Cree is not that good. But yeah, anyway, Kevin, I'll pass it over to you, and thank you.
All right. Yeah, thank you. Niganito na naskamoni sa kaksiwat sit kawasamina go mwapatu omsise. So I'd like to thank the creator for allowing us to meet, even if it is virtual. And I'm also glad for the water keepers for keeping these webinars going, because they're all such beautiful topics and so close to our homes and our home fires. And of course, our hearts and our families. And again, just sort of making sure that we understand the power of prayer as well, that we communally maybe give a prayer to the thunder beings. Make it rain. Let's communally use the way we do things and pray to the chief thunder being to work and help the fires, not for them to spread as far and fast and wide. but to nourish Mother Earth, and for that summer to roll into that gardening and planting and harvesting season, right? So it's all that cycle of life, and we notice it when things are off a little bit. You know, already right away. When the spruce, kapisakpagag, we call it, right, which is kind of like sakpagaupism, which is the May moon. That's when the pussy willows are starting to pop, and then so on, right? You start seeing that, and all of a sudden the bears, that's when they start kapimuskitzig, right? So that we talked about bear teachings, and then all the fasters, all the chicken dancers, all the lodges that are popping up in our territories, for them to have good ceremonies. So because they look after us too. They sometimes maybe we can't be there in person. Sometimes you know, we have prior commitments or multiple things that we need to take care of, and we can't show up at those ceremonies, but they're still committed to those prayers that we've done since time immemorial, as they say it, right? So again, these are the lodges that are continuing. The sun dancers are still continuing. They've never ever given up, even though things were outlawed in this country. We weren't allowed to sing our songs. We weren't allowed to put up these lodges. So what would we do? We went underneath, we went in the night, we went far deep in the bush, and we still continued them. So I thank those strong-willed people. And then maybe they were hard-headed in a way, but they were also, there's a commitment to the Creator, because these laws were given by the Creator to keep this balance and to understand how delicate we are, right? How delicate we are, that we need water, we need rain. We need that snow. We need a good amount of snow for these times when it's kind of this dry season right now. And again, coming from sort of like just having nice, huge, big ears that I have, I always give thanks for these beauties here, these big hubcaps. I get to listen to elders, and I get to listen to all sorts of different elders from different places. But one thing, El Nino, and you know, that's supposed to be coming up here pretty soon, and it's not this year yet. So if things are pretty dry right now, and you start listening to sort of like the cycles of the earth, and we have internet now. And when I approached some of our elders for doing the work that we do here at Kanyasik, Ministiquin Lake Cree Nation in northwestern Saskatchewan, in the boreal forest. So we're full of trees all around. We're full of forest. And we're full of lakes. It's not right here is kind of like a transition zone between the plains of south of us, north of Saskatchewan River, and then into the Canadian Shield. So this is kind of like the area that we're at right now, and it's delicate right now, right? We have to have prayers to the fire spirit. We have to have prayers to everything that we're related to. So again, I think my focus, and I think, you know, I thank Jared for his work that he does in languages. I thank the work that he does for, you know, the indigenizing our foods, learning how to read those tides, you know, learning how to read and share that with another generation, which is his boy. He talked about his son. So those are the things that we need to do, is that, you know, it's their responsibility. We're kind of borrowing their time a little bit, and then so on, right? So I'm sure those teachings are going to hit those grandchildren of yours. If you don't have any, it's going to hit those grandchildren. So that's sort of some of the teachings that we have here, is if we do things right with our children and share these teachings, we're going to be okay, right? And I also want to remind, when I was going to the elders here and I was asking them, oh boy, climate change, what's going to happen? Oh my goodness, you know, ozone layer, what's going to happen, you know? And I thought they were going to give and bestow, like, and they did, but I thought it was going to be like more of a panic mode, like I have. Like I was like, this is the end of the world, sky is falling. And then what they said was, in just the calm way that they do, Quw'utsun himiguapa, you know, Quw'utsun, and then that's what they said. And what that means is go home to those old teachings, go home to those lodges, go home to those ceremonies, and there you're going to find your answers. And it is there that we do find our answers. We learn how to live when times like this have happened, because this isn't the first time like climate change has happened for us. That's how long we've been here. We've been here through a flood. We've been here through ice ages, and we've been here through forest fires, winds, and all these different. So we've been here quite a long time, despite what DNA and whatever sampling that they're going to try to throw at us to say, oh yeah, we've traveled from somewhere else. Oh yeah, we did for sure. But it's not where you think, you know. We're a lot older. Our DNA comes from this land right here. So again, when it's here, and it's kind of like Canada, it reminds me of the word kaganata. Kaganata is clean, where it's clean, right? And things clean land, and just think about it, like the common sense. Let's say if I have ceremonial items, let's say if I have a pipe, or I've heard whistles, I've heard all these different things. And this is in Musum Panoma. I heard him say this in a recording, and it was him. He used to go out in the bush and he would hang his pipes, he would hang his whistles, he would hang his drums, his rattles, and then he would allow the wind to clean those items. He would allow you know, the grandfather wind to come and just do their cleaning, you know, cleaning of all those things that he had to use. And he used them quite a bit in all these different ceremonies. So again, for us too, for ourselves, it's nice to be out there, but also to understand that we have that power of prayer. We have that power of our medicines. We have those teachings in there to give us clues how to behave, right? And then another thing I wanted to add was, and I'm starting to say this, and I say this to use voice, to use the power of my voice, to make it into fruition. I want it to happen, but we still just never know when our time here on this earth walk is going to be finished, right? We just never know that. But with that said, I envy those elders that lived into their hundreds, and I sat with like three elders for sure that lived over 100. And like I said earlier, I'm only 25, right? 25 years old. So that's a lot. 75 more years. So I'm just kidding. But anyways, these old guys and old ladies, 2 old ladies and 1 old man. And these were my tapans. These are 3 of my tapans. And one of them, Pigingagitit, was one. His name was Frizzly Bear. And I took a picture with him when I was 5 years old. I have a picture with him, and he's been sitting in the back with a pipe, little, you know, one of those pipes. And I remember hearing him. I remember visiting him. And his name is also Qwustenuxun Williams. That was his name. And then the other one, the other 2 old ladies was from here, you know, from our old ladies from here. And I saw them, and they were so active, and their brains were sharp, right? So kind of envious. You know, so my study is, then this is kind of like going to be the lifelong study. I want to get there, you know. I want to, with a real good active head like that, just like those old ladies. So part of that is genetics. We'll say that, okay? Genetically, we have to have like old people, which we do. And if you talk to those elders that are in those ceremonial lodges, that was the norm. Back then, people used to eat. The other part has to do with a diet. What are we eating? How are we treating our bodies, right? What are we putting inside to have that longevity? How to live into that ripe old age? Because the elders, when you talk to them, when you hang out with them, and I don't want to be an elder right away. I want to be an elder way utinikan, okay? I want to go through this process and learn as I go. So maybe I can bestow a little bit of wisdom when I'm over here, way over here, if I do things right. The third thing that I found out was it's a legacy, some sort of legacy. So it doesn't matter how you do this, whether you go to church to create a legacy, whether you go to the Sundance or the Sweat Lodge, or whether you do it in yourself, by yourself, but it's like building and developing like a little shrine. And you'll see some people, kind of like what I mean about shrine is have pictures of your great-great-grandparents or oldest pictures that you can find, hang them up. And then also have pictures of your family, your wife, your loved ones. Make a wall full of pictures that are of your family, put them there. And then you walk by that every day, and that's that legacy reminder. Oh yes, I've got something to live for. It's right here. I'm walking right by it all the time. So those three things, isn't that cool? So what happened was with these old people right here, our relatives, what they used to do was there's ceremonial holders. And when you get into a lodge, that's the shrine right there that people go to every year. And they're committed to that, those songs, those bundles, those pipes, those teachings, those medicines that are in there, those berries that need to be picked, a certain time. You can't pick these things in winter time, but sometimes I do. I have a real good picking berry patch in Cold Lake. Somewhere there, sometimes I gotta go to the grocery store to get berries. So these things, we're supposed to pick them, during the summertime when they're ripe, right? When they're ready to be picked. And then other things too, the foods, right, that we pick, the medicines, the sweetgrass, the sages, the cedar we got to trade for. We got to travel to get all of these different roots that keep our blood and our hearts, our organs, What are the medicines that we need to drink right now in the springtime? Well, it's already kind of past here, but we looked into it, and this is something that the elders used to do here, and they used to drink birch water. That birch tree, they used to tap it every spring, and the old people used to drink it, and we're starting to revive it. And you only have a little window to do this, right? You only have a little window, and then you got to plug them again, and then you got to wait another year. But it's a tonic that you drink that is so good. And the type of sugar, it's a fructose type of sugar, and it's good for our bodies. And in our communities right now, there's a lot of diabetes, a lot of obesity. And if you want to live off the earth, and I always, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna share my, I forgot I have a little PowerPoint here that I always get, I always forget man. But I wanted to title this Dancing Around the Culture of Food, right? And the reason why I included dancing was because, man, we have round dance, we have ghost dance, we have the feast, we have all these different ceremonies where we always incorporate food, right? And the toughest thing for me to see, to be honest, but it's so hard, but it's a good hard, okay? It's difficult. There's because in our days, it's hard to go hunting, it's hard to go harvesting, it's hard to go do all these things to prepare for a ceremony, all these dances that we do. So the convenience is we'll go to the Walmart, we'll go to the local grocery store, and we'll go get foods that are very easy. But the hard part is to harvesting moose and to preparing that moose, or going fishing, going duck hunting, doing all those things that we should be doing. So we need to sort of dance around that idea. And like, it's hard enough for the lodge keepers to be doing what they're doing, but also to be constantly having that responsibility of doing those ceremonies for us. So we need to work as community members, and we need to hunt for them. We need to hunt and gather for these ceremonies. So you can't be saying, oh, I don't know why we do that all the time, and point the fingers. We need to come become active, and then provide those foods that are healthy for us. And like Jessie said, I like what she said when those traditional foods are good for us. They are medicine. Like the Inuit are already, they've done so many studies up there because the processed foods were going so high, and that's what they were eating. Their sicknesses were getting higher and higher. But when they started going and harvesting, more of their traditional foods, guess what happened? This went down, and then their health went up, right? And it's because probably they're moving, right? So again, taking responsibility for ourselves. If you want to be an old man, if you want to be an old woman, if you want to see grandchildren, if you want to see great-grandchildren, we're going to have to take care of ourselves, and we're going to have to eat right. We're going to have to exercise. And number one thing, we're going to have to socialize, and that COVID era sucked. Oh, the man did that suck. It was horrible. So you couldn't visit and hang out with your friends. Quw'utsun was so, we were just kind of like in isolation. And that isolation, what happens in that isolation, dealing with ceremony, everyone kind of went through some sort of fasting ceremony, a fast of not visiting. If you're a social butterfly, if you like hanging out with family, you couldn't even hang out with them. So socially, we were fasting, and then we were kind of contemplating, okay, what's going to happen? What are we going to be doing? What's our next move? How should we, am I going to make it? So you're processing just like you do an actual fast. So when you're in a fast, I don't know. I prayed hard during COVID. I self-reflected. I know I exercised, not as much as I should have, but we were doing like lots of physical activities. And I missed my family. I missed my friends. I missed Qwu'utsun. I missed all the ceremonies. So I was really contemplating to see what the heck is the next move going to look like. And I missed that family, And then, so now we're out, now we can move around. And then now we've also learned how to use Zoom. We've used technology. We're starting to use all this stuff. So we're starting to share our stories. And like Jared he gave us such a good look of what he's up to over there and what the possibilities are. So I'm hoping there's a lot of people that are listening in on this, on this session, and then people share it, because there's some really interesting things that are being shared right now. Stories, being inclusive, and then of course who we are, where do we come from, and how sensitive we are. And we should start thinking and readjusting the way we buy things as well. Maybe in a 200-kilometer or 100-kilometer radius, maybe that's, if we can organize ourselves that way, so we don't have to go so far and burn so much gas to get like fruits or vegetables like a long ways, where you can actually possibly even grow your own, right? So again, I wanted to give the creator, of course, acknowledgement, and Mother Earth, right? So again, we did that in a pipe ceremony this morning. We were giving thanks and wanting to promote Quw'utsun, right? Qwustenuxun. So how to promote well-being, but also understanding how to use our medicines in a good way, and also sort of not to follow the capitalistic model. Capitalism is kind of real, I don't know, and I don't want to sound like a socialist. I don't know if like English is such a, they departmentalize everything, they categorize everything. The true socialists were probably our elders, that think about communally. How's everybody doing? But not just the two-leggeds. They think about the moose. They think about the buffalo. They think about those bears. They think about those winged ones. They think about Mother Earth. How's the water? What about the thunder beings? What about the sun? What about the wind? What about all those different things all around us? So true socialism is probably that, but like the only ones that I've ever seen do that are the ones that are still doing those lodges. And they're doing that despite, all the rules and all the laws that have happened. So again, atayukyun, these cultural teachings, all these cultural ways of planting. And there's some really good books out there, really good literature. And there's one talking about in southern Saskatchewan, there's a book that was written, and it was about how well First Nations people and the Métis settlements and scripts were doing in terms of planting. And then the farmers then were getting paranoid because they're like, well, what about us? You gotta cut them off. You gotta watch, you gotta develop policy. They can't be, they're out planting us, they're out gardening us, they're out. So this is documented, right? And then and it's because we have that connection. We know how to pray. We have songs of Mother Earth. We have lots of songs of Mother Earth. And then what she said in our worldview was, I'll look after you. There's two things that I'll look after. And then she's also Qwustenuxun Williams, mamo mo Qwustenuxun Williams. So that's a part of Atayukyun. We needed to adjust because where I come from is kind of like a semi-isolated area. 30 kilometers out, then all of a sudden you have cell service, right? So in this little area here, thank goodness to Elon Musk, that's my bro. If somebody knows him, tell him I called him my bro. And then so he's got a little dish here that's allowing me to teach from here. Otherwise, Sastel, this failed us, right? I'd be lagging. I would probably not be able to do this if it wasn't for my bro. Okay, so maybe he's got to invest in Keepers of the Water or Kanyas culture camps. Hey, so anyway, we're trying something here, and this was in our plans about I'm gonna say 2019. I'm pretty sure this was in our plans. And we were trying to get this, and one of my really good friends, I call him Nichinikik, he come up with this idea of water and creating water filtration system that was of nature. And this is the idea of us trying to figure out, okay, water issues. We really wanted to figure out, what do we do? We need to clean this, and people are starting to feel the effects of like too much chlorine, the chemical treatments of our water systems. Like we were trying to figure out a clean way, natural way to filter the water so we can drink it. And so we did some scanning around, we found it. And then, but with this water as well, we wanted to figure out a way, because we're avid gardeners. We always have been in this community. We've always gardened. And whether it was wild things that we would transplant, wild medicines that we would transplant and they would grow here, which we've been doing. And so we looked, and then this thing called the grocer and hydroponics. Hydroponics is a new way of growing, and we're trying it. So we've purchased in the community 2 grocers, and you can probably Google grocer. But we're trying it for the first time, and I have a couple of really good things to say about it. One, we don't have to travel to Cold Lake. We don't have to travel to the cities to go find fresh greens. Fresh greens that we can eat for salads, fresh stuff that we can use for herbs, fresh kale, fresh, spinach, fresh different types of lettuce. So again, where bok choy can grow in these, like there's a whole bunch of different things that can grow in these grocers, and they're functioning right now. But what's happening in the community is we have to relearn and re-educate ourselves that we've never really always ultimately ate meat. Okay, yes, we're hunters, we know how to hunt, but there's also eggs, there's also wild edibles that are out there, but also those gardens that we've always had, right? So knowing that there was a problem that happened here, okay, and hopefully a lot of my own community members hopefully listen to this. So we had a a research that was done here, and I'm pretty sure it was McGill University that did this, University of Waterloo, sorry. University of Waterloo came here and they did some questions, and they were having our elders speak. So one of our elders speaks up and she says, oh yes, yeah, we always garden here. I remember the very first Indian agent that was starting to move here. Indian agents were so powerful. They were given a lot of authority. And when they come here, they even called them Sunyao Ugamao, the boss, money chief. That's what they call them, the Indian agent. And what the Indian agent was, he started strategically on purpose this idea of dependency cycle kicked off by this Indian agent, which was so evil. So this Indian agent would come to one family, and then they would say, let me check out your garden. And then they would look at the garden and he would assess the garden. Ah, your garden's good. You don't need these rations. I'm going to go to your neighbor. And then if that one didn't have a good garden, oh, all the rations were given, right? So the neighbor is looking at this and saying, what? That's not fair, you know? That's not our way. So this dependency of ration day started coming. Every month, why people are waiting. Pretty soon, that first garden was saying, I'm not going to garden. I'm not going to bother gardening because like I want those rations too. Like this, my neighbor that kind of doesn't know how to garden or forgot or just never had a successful garden. So I'm going to forget my garden. And then they started having welfare day that evolved into welfare day. And now welfare day is the one that consumes us. It's consuming us. Pretty soon, people are just waiting for that, right? We forgot the work. We forgot our relationship with Mother Earth. That's this one right here. Mamo gawi mao, right? This is the one that said was going to provide for us. But it's going to have to take work. You have to work for that garden. You have to. Now it's still time. You can still plant right now. It's May. It's just the beginning of planting season. So we still have time to plant and garden and give acknowledgements to Mother Earth. Protocol, put a little bit of tobacco down, till the gardens, right? Start seeding and then start planting those gardens for healing, healing ourselves. And then start learning how to promote better eating habits, not just straight processed food, which is the cheap food, which is the most affordable food, just because that welfare check is not big enough anymore, right? So if you don't have that much money, you're going to buy and make that dollar stretch as far and wide as possible, and you're just barely making it by. So it's like poverty, we're just living in poverty, and that shouldn't be, right? So again, hydroponics, we've got 2 of them, and we want to invite people to come down, and we were going to just put it out there July 26th, 27th, 28th, 29th, and we'll probably announce it virtually here via poster or whatever. But we're going to have gathering, water gathering, maybe around food, maybe, but for sure around science, Indigenous science, and Indigenous knowledge, how to transfer Indigenous knowledge. And we've got a nice little lineup of people coming out. So we invite people out there. And again, Keepers of the Water have been with us through the entire time, helping us, organizing it, and being such a good partner, and helping each other out in developing spaces where we can talk about the importance of water, the importance of food, the importance of our cultural teachings. So again, Wisagichak, okay, our older brother, Mamo Kawimao, and Kisagaupisim, Iguao Gusua Ohe. So this is why Wisagichak exists. So lots of teachings with this one. Teachings about berries, the importance of food, how to hunt, how to screw up and get yourself back up, dust yourself off, and then get back up, right? So that's the thing. This has so much good teachings, this guy. The importance of brain development, that we're starting to go through, like, and again, Jared, when you opened up with all the different sounds that he was making in that beautiful, beautiful language of his, that was like, whoa, of course, like I said, I'm like, my ears kind of whoop, right? Love that. But again, our brain development, we need to incorporate language. We need to incorporate this to our children. We need to show them how to prepare these ducks, these geese. We need to show them because we have that ecological knowledge. We have that traditional ecological education. We have that. So we need to figure it out, how to engage and how to privilege our elders. That's what we need to do. We need to figure that out. And it's simple, I think we need just to invite them. Summertime just happened. Get those elders out, because now they want to be out. They've been stuck inside for too long. They've been out, they've been winterizing too long. Now bring them out. It's like the bears are out, and they'll come out and share all these little things about rabbits, about teas, about how to skin, how to prepare fish, how to feed yourself, how to make it so delicious. What type of flavors, natural flavors are they using? Oh my goodness, that was such a good fish. What the heck did you put in that wood, right? What was that flavor? They'll tell you. They're going to tell you all this, And then, of course, we have Quw'utsun. We have all this beautiful knowledge all around us, that we can use. But the summer programming, in terms of ideas, there should be so much work here that's developing from just taking people outside. And then when you take people outside, sort of like the chemicals inside, they start balancing, and then the endorphins kind of kick in. And when you get them tired, doesn't matter what age, okay? Get those elders tired, get those little babies tired. Actually, maybe those babies will tire us out because they have like unbelievable amount of energy, moly. But they, get them out and about, and it balances the chemicals inside the brain. Paddling, gardening, seeding, working. 1 more minute. Is that what we have? You have a question or number one? You have to let me know.
1 minute.
1 minute left. Okay. All right. So here's some of the chemicals that we balance out. Okay, I'm gonna rip through this, and then these are the activities that you can do throughout the year. Not a shortage of things to do, right? Hunting camps, fishing camps, medicine camps, dog sledding adventures, winter travel, all fun things. Right now, we need to be on this. We're the oldest, we're the original hippies, you're gonna say, right? We're the original green movement. We're the oldest ones that deal with the green movement. We are the green movement, right? So people are starting to live like us. They want to know our connection. Right? Youth gardens, there's us with the spring tapping. There's the old lady's hands telling us about medicines. Drink your teas in the fall time, you're preparing for winter. And then, of course, in the winter time, half a year in Canada is winter, at least where we are. So you get outside, that doesn't stop us. You just have shorter days, right? But these are kind of all the different little things that you can do. Food, the methodologies, fishing, snaring, teaching lake things, water things, fish things, moving out and about, feeding our dogs, a big little shout out to Save the Res Dogs here. We love our dogs. All of our dogs are res dogs here, boy, but they're fast. Holy smokes, they're fast. So you can come visit us. There's our website. We have a group here right now of 19 people, different mental health therapists, like they're older people. So that's what lens we're teaching them as. They just finished peeling trees. making another canoe, a full big canoe. Finished hike tanning, lots of hunters, gatherers. We're everything. We're everything in the mix. So
Hi, Kinanas Gumtin. Those were two great presentations. So I'm just going to summarize Kevin's presentation. But first off, he said he's 25, so that makes me 24. And he talked about a couple things I'll quickly summarize. He mentioned COVID. And so when COVID happened, we need to kind of have maybe even a webinar of what we learned on COVID. I think that might be something worth doing. But we were completely landlocked in our communities. Grocery stores were going empty. The shelves were literally going empty. And so it was like an awakening as well of like, where are we going to get our food? And there was like a big going back to the land, like hunting parties were formed, and people, the hunters and the young men were, whether they knew how to or not, were being made to go and provide for the community. So they were having to go hunt and fish and gather the food because the elders, like they couldn't get any food, like the families needed food. So it was really a good thing in that way, because it forced people to be dependent on the land, which is going to happen again. Something's going to happen again where we are going to need to be on the land. And then Kevin talked about living in poverty. And this is something that Keepers of the Water, what we talk about is what makes a community wealthy. What is a wealthy community? For us, a wealthy community is having access to water, to clean water. What is clean water? Clean water isn't treated water. Our standard of clean water is being able to go to the stream, go to the lake, go to the river, and being able to drink the water right from the source. That's a rich community. If you are able to do that, that means you're rich. Another thing that means if you're a rich community is if you have, you're taking care of the land. You can go and pick medicines. You can go and hunt. And so when, I really want this message to get out to the people who sit on the chief and councils and the chairmans and councils and have these decisions to, if they want to clear cut or let all of this industrial activity in, is like, okay, but when things shut down, does your community have access to clean water? Does your community have the ability to still keep hunting, fishing, and harvesting? And then the other thing that you guys both talked about was traditional knowledge is key. So accessing the elders are still there. The knowledge keepers are there. You guys are both knowledge keepers. So for those of you watching, reach out to Kevin, reach out to Jared, because they have a lot of these same teachings of like, even like, what are you going to hunt? How are you going to harvest it? Who's harvesting? When are you harvesting? Flavoring the food. You guys both talked about that. There's different kinds of woods that you guys are burning depending on how you want your food to taste. Like there's a lot of knowledge there. And then the one thing I liked, Kevin, also, I liked it all, but the legacy. So that's what's behind my wall here is my chapon and my, my mushrooms and cookums. And like, that's where we draw our strength from, right? And so we're going to open it up for 2 questions because we're kind of on time, but we did start a little bit late. So we will open it up for questions. If anybody viewing has a question, just let me know and then we'll get them answered for you.
How many viewers do you have?
We have, well, this is gonna be, so there's about 50 right now, but this is going to be turned into a YouTube, so this will get watched numerous times after. And that, I might as well mention that. So this is going to be the launch of our podcast. I did let some of you know. So Keepers of the Water is launching a podcast. Yay! So we'll be doing our official launch in June or July, and this will be our first podcast. And so we'll be doing them either like this in a webinar, and then we'll turn it into a podcast. But once we launch our podcast, we will be doing a monthly podcast on all kinds of topics. So there's that. Nigel, is there any questions that folks have? The other thing too is you mentioned about sugar, and we need to talk about that. Like, I don't want to be like sound preachy or anything, but I'm not like, we don't do pop in my house, and like, as you get healthier, as you come to eat more of the fruits and the vegetables and the meats, your body actually relies less on sugar. It's always nice to have a sweet and stuff, but your body tells you, like, especially when you're consistently eating like meat and fruit and veggies, that your body will tell you if you have enough sugar or not. And so what happens though is that, like, and we see this a lot in our communities, is like the young kids, they're getting pop. So it's like, and that was the thing too, is like, we learn, and I'll close with this, is like, we had elders like saying in residential schools that they were given candy, and that's where their teeth started to rot. Like, you see a lot of people, it's like an elder said, like, I have no teeth because that's all they gave us in residential schools was this candy. And so there became this, somehow in our society, it became like, well, if you want to show love to your grandchildren, you give them chips and pop, right? Even my mushroom and we used to go to like the Vilna, because they had an account at the store there, and like for a treat we would get chips and pop. So it was like somewhere along the line those teachings were given, and so I know that families mean well when they're giving their kids pop and they're giving their kids chips. It's like, I love you, here you go. But we need to like change that, because it's like it's hurting them more than helping them, right? So it's like causing obesity, and like the silver teeth kids, and people make jokes out of it, but coming from a social work background, it's not funny. Like, we need to like change how we care for our kids, and that's the tough part, right, Kevin, is like having access to that. Like, we don't want to shame people, because we all know how expensive food is right now. So we all know how expensive it is to buy like even apples and things like this. That's why it's so important right now for all of us to like grow our own food. Even if you're in a city, you can grow something. You can grow carrots, and you can grow little things where it's like you can give your kids like at least a little bit of that. But we're going to close. There's so much more we could talk about how cities are unsustainable and they're growing too fast and all these other things. I'll let Jared give a closing comment, and I'll let Kevin give a closing comment, and then we'll just close off the day. Thank you for joining us. We have our second part to this. Tanya McCullum and Paul Belanger will be joining us for the second series, which is June 16th. Is it June 16th, Alyssa?
It's going to be the 13th. So
June 13th. So join in on our Facebook. We'll be going live again June 13th. So I'll hand it over to you, Jared, and then Kevin, you can close off.
Hey, oh, hi, tap, CMNC, no, what's up, Timu, I tap, and at the Walmok Mastimo, oh, hi, tap. The more I hear about and the more I think about our traditional foods, the more I realize that the world needs our foods. It is the way to resolve a lot of the issues in this world, and it's almost as if we've been handed all this information, to like help the world around us, because as everybody's able to see with all these, like these fires and all these things going on, that we need to turn into these, like these like old ways to step in this. Yeah. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Hey, oh, hi, tap.
Right, yeah, thank you, Jared, for that. And then thank you for having a podcast like this. But in closing, we still have time to plant, and then also start studying or investing or even creating, or there's youth gardens, community gardens, inner city gardens. There's also apartment gardening, hydroponics that took off during COVID. So they used to be so expensive, but now they're somewhat getting affordable. Look for grants, team up with people that are doing that right now. Learn. That's the best way to learn, is to actually hang out with the green thumb, right? Whoever's doing it, reach out, search them out, and hang out with them, and just learn as much as you can off of them. Yksi sähkinen askump na onista. Kumjugisa kans na o.